corn's a little overhead tall, so they're just about ready to go in the tassel. So we're glad to have Steve and his team here tonight. But you cover a broad area. And by the way, congratulations. Did you see last Friday's report? How good you guys really are. 176.6. 2 bushel better than ever. I got news for you. If the nation's 176.6, you guys are 245 and greater. The state of Illinois went over 200 bushel for the first time ever. And you know and I know that there's marginal acres in the state of Illinois. So that means you folks know how to flat out raise corn. And so it's a lot of fun to watch you go. Let me grab my pointer here. Thank you. So my job tonight is to inspire you. And to have you get to a spot in your farming operation, your family operation, where you're having fun again. Because I'm really excited where you and I can take our production. And there was a survey out, and it's interesting to look at this. They surveyed farmers all over the nation. 31% of the farmers say the problem they have with their family farm is the Chicago Board of Trade price is not high enough. Duh. We all get that, right? No question. We all wish there was higher corn prices. But that really worries me. If 31% of you think that's where that's going to have to happen for us to be profitable, I really like the 25% that said, no, 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 no. The answer to success in our family farms is that we need to get really good at what we do and we lower inputs. So it's all about understanding where are you and I going to go. And it's time that if we've fallen off the horse, it's time for us to get back on. And by that I mean you and I have to understand what we do each and every day. Let's take a look at where your comfort zone is. This young man here, I have nothing but a good game of golf. I understand that. This is a 54-year-old farmer in eastern Illinois, right on the Indiana line, and he gave up. And he went and rented his farm to a young man next to him for high cash rent, and he moved to Florida, and he said, I'm going to play golf. I'm done. And I want to encourage you, there's nothing wrong with a golf game occasionally, but what I want you to focus on is time to get back in the cab, and when you and I take control, and we start to manage our operation like we never have before. Yes, high yields this year were a really sweet reward for us. Because can you imagine if our farms had been in the 210 to 215 bushel corn? There'd have been a lot of pain, wouldn't there? And so it's time for you and I to start to analyze. And last year I started this. Can somebody take the main lights down in the room? Just keep the spot. Thank you. And so I showed you last year how in our family we said we need to take out $125 an acre out of our farming operation. And we need to understand every cost. And if we could do that, that got our break-even down to $378. When I say our break-even is $378, I'm talking about paying the family a really nice cash rent. I'm talking about every cost is in there. And so we went and we analyzed all these different processes, and we said this is the goal for us to capture that. And to do that tonight, what I want you to think about is who can you buddy up with? Now, I got this blurred out because I don't think it's necessary you see every penny that I spend. So maybe if Tim wanted to get revenge, he could bring that back in focus. But you need to find somebody that's really good at spreadsheets. And I have it. I'm really fortunate. I got a tremendous financial team here. So Tim Kaiser and his team, we understand every penny in Greg and Cindy's farm, where it goes. I understand all my costs, I understand all my profit, and we start to refocus and we shift until you have knowledge and understand where the next steps are. And there's some sacred cows. I'm going to be the first to tell you, we're at the supper table and Cindy questions me, do we really need a third combine? That's kind of a, you don't like to talk about it. What else is for dessert? You get off those subjects that are kind of sacred, And so there is nothing that we don't analyze. There's nothing off the table. We look at every process, whether it's specialty crops or commercial corn or row spacing in beans or putting up nitrogen storage or figuring out how to redo our nitrogen. Everything is for examination. And we're saying we're going to analyze everything, and we're going to become the best that we can possibly be and live in the sweet spot. So when corn does get back to 425, look out. Because what you're going through the last 3 seasons, it's iron sharpening iron. And when it gets back to 425, 450, I feel sorry for Deere and Case because they're not going to keep up. Because you're going to be in a position and profit where you can rent more ground. You maybe will be able to buy the 40 next to you. So when we talk about analyzing everything, I'm not talking about your banker Potter. And I don't know what the farmer said here sitting next to him, but he's getting the snake eye, and he's like, you're not going to get the extra tractor. You got to prove it to me. So I'm not saying you should become banker Potter. I'm saying you should become Warren the investor. And you're going to write checks this year. And you're going to change your operation and invest in things that make you money. And the reason they're going to make you money because because you've done your homework on the spreadsheet and you know where you can spend some more money and where you shouldn't spend some more money. Let me give you an example. 2012, this is my home place down the Dairy Bottom. And it's a drought of a generational drought for us. This was painful. This is where you run the combine through some of those spots and there isn't a sound on the corn head because there's no ears. And I looked at this and I told myself, I remember calling Cindy and I said, I'm not doing this again. We're changing. And she's like, well, you're in a drought. And I said, we're not farming like this again. We're going to invest. And so in 2012 winter and 2013 spring, we started looking at drip irrigation. And we went in and we started to invest. And we brought a drip bar and we started putting in acres and acres of drip. And we're at 18 inches deep. And we now have the ability to come in and spoon feed a crop at any given time. And we're keeping corn really happy. Now, there's a cost here. This is a serious investment. But the next time we were in a really dry area, and it really got dry, look at the same area and look at the difference. This bottom would average about 187 bushel in a good year. Since we put in drip, it's 300 year after year. We've added 100 plus bushel because it gives us the opportunity to take it to another whole place. So let's just back up because 5 years ago, I'd like to just show you what my family farm looked like. And it's no secret, I love corn. Man, I really like corn. Corn on corn, you can see it. We were 70% corn on our whole farming operation. And we were what, 30% beans. Actually, in 2012 was the first year we had any seed at all, where we started to branch out and seed. But I knew we could not continue. And I remember telling my farm team and saying, guys, we have to diversify. It's not going to work. As much as I like raising corn, and 5 years from now, we're going to be hurting if we stick with corn only. And so last year, this is how our farm looked. And you can see we really grew the seed side of the business. Our corn's now down to 29%. Beans are 40%. Specialty crops are 6%. And it changed dramatically the profit side of the farm. And you look at it here. I'm going to need, let's give it a little bit of time. I don't know what you're stirring with, Tim, but it's making it interesting. Let me back up one slide. I think we got some power issues. We'll give him 1 second here. You've been close. I'll go ahead and just talk loud. Don't hook speakers up if that's going to throw off the screen. I don't have to talk at all tomorrow. So, I wonder if Cindy has more desserts. Why don't we, Tim, let's just, But at the same time, all of you have opportunity to look in your area. And so there's opportunity for you to be, we'll just go ahead and switch this around. I like the looks of this. You want to go back?
Is you on? Check this.
There we go.
What's that?
Let me just take care of it. I'll just back it up.
It's not. Okay, how it loads.
We can just keep going.
Is it our controller here? What screens are on? Bottom 3. I have it removed.
The rain's coming.
I think that's funny.
That plant's going to run 24/7. And you say, well, they pulled into our area and it rained 2 inches last night. I wonder who the poor sucker is that's going to have the next field. You're up. And so we were hired to come in. This field's about 30 miles from here. You can see the damage. And we were hired to come in because we got bullet on our rippers. So Libby's hired us to come in and help this individual. He was beside himself. And they said, well, we'll bring Greg in. We double ripped this. And we just parked here to show you what it looked like before we started. Is this field ready to rock and roll next year? Probably not. Probably not. As good as I like bullet, I'm not going to make any written guarantees. And so you see this and you realize there can be cost. What would you do for this though? If you're Warren the investor and not Potter the banker, you would do what? You would start to tile. Drainage fixes a multitude of sins. And so we had a little bit of a challenge on this 187. We had a 15-foot hill. So for 700 feet, we dug through and we got this 18-inch pipe in 15 feet deep. And so when you start to bring the plows in, you start to revolutionize the way you've ever raised corn. And you can see this part of the farm has really struggled in the past. This was a farm we just were fortunate enough to pick up, and so we've come in and put tile and 30-foot spacing, and we revolutionized the way we're going to grow corn. And so you're going to be investing dollars. But at the same time, we're in the corn and soybean business. There's not enough specialty crops. The majority of our income is corn and soybeans. And so we focus on it. And we say, what's the opportunity? Yes, the market is $3.50, but what's the opportunity for us? And so let's take a look at what we've done with inside this corn and soybeans itself. What we've done is we've gone in and said with our sharp pencil, look, corn on corn is going to be 100% irrigation. And our corn bottoms, on the big river bottoms, it's 100% irrigation. I'm not going to play corn on corn, even though every year it's our highest yielding. And then in the other acres, hybrids, we said, let's go non-GMO. Why not? And of course, then we have regular commercial corn. And it's no different on soybeans. And we start to look, and we look at the net return on that, and you can see, for some reason it doesn't like these slides, does it? And you can start to see why we would do that. And so, kind of hard for you to see, but commercial corn, maybe it'll give me one here. It's down here. It just barely breaks even. And so we realize that's a challenge for us. What do we got going, guys? Screen here. We need to just shut down.
I can reboot again.
You just want to reboot? Good. So we talk about, I'm curious, we're going to reboot. I think it needs to. There we go. Before you call service, isn't that what they like to say to reboot? I'll say this for that little deal we've ever done. We've hauled it to a lot of farm shows.
Let's go straight from here.
Farm progress outside and everything. I've just been full in love with it. So if this is the first time it's ever okay, let's see if it works. And so now, though, we have lots of choices, don't we? There's lots of good genetics companies out there. And so you and I need to go. If you can bring my screen up here, Tim, that'd be fantastic. So we have a lot of choices that we can look at. Let's take a look at it, what we're doing. And so if we go in and we plant a non-traded corn, turn me down just a bit, just a hot. A non-traded corn, we can buy that much reasonable. Obviously, we're going to have to be putting insecticide on it, so we're going to have a $23 investment right out of the gate. But you go over here and look to where we have the Smart Stacks and the Triple Pro, they're $141 an acre. And so there's a difference there. And so it comes down to you and I have some sweat equity. And so if we go here and we put this together, we realize we're going to have to go on the field and scout. But the difference in these two genetics is 17 bushel break even. In other words, the conventional corn can yield 17 bushel less than your All-Star Smart Stack, and you're still dollars ahead. But you're going to have to scout for corn borer and rootworm, and you're going to have to watch for aphids, and you're going to be looking for gray leaf. And those things can make quite a difference. Do the conventional corns always second? Oh, no. I got a Stein conventional number that went 302 in our plot. Third highest corn of the whole lineup of 28 hybrids. So you start thinking that way, and you get out of your comfort zone. And you say, what are some of the opportunity? What about soybeans? In this area, we're really lucky. Over in Bloomington, Illinois, we have Cargill, and we have a market for conventional non-GMO soybeans, and they're willing to pay us a $1.10 premium. Well, the seed costs less than the Roundup Ready 2s by 12 bushel, but we spend another $12.85 on chemical, and you probably wouldn't put those where 2 years ago you had a huge outbreak of water hemp. You got to be smart about it. But the return on this per acre, this will trade a tractor. This will help put your son through college or daughter, or trade pickups or kitchen. That's more than kitchen cabinets, $86 an acre. And so these are things that you have to start paying attention to. And it opens up a world of opportunity. How about early bean planting? Is your farm to the spot where maybe you could buy a second used planter? And if you have somebody that can run that, could you go out and start planting beans the exact same day you start corn? Because the reward is high. We've talked about it all week. I get question after question in the Q&A session say, can Y-Drop put on a special nitrogen nutrient mix on soybeans to make them yield 10 bushel more? And I don't know of any magic solution. We've tried a lot of different stuff on soybeans of wide drop, but I can't get it to yield 10 bushel field after field after field and stay consistent. But I can make early planted beans go 12 to 15 bushel year in and year out. And yes, we will frost some beans off starting on April 10th. And you say, well, Greg, I'm 1,800 acres, and I got one planter, and I'm just busier than busy. There's no way I can afford a second planter. Maybe you ought to plant beans for a week before you do corn. Because what have we seen in genetics in corn? The last 2 years, the later season corn in May is hitting huge home runs. We've had 2 years now, Mother's Day massacre. On 4/19 of this year, you had better said, I'm going to wait. If you said fire in the hole and your planters are running, and you went through the 19th to the 26th, you are really good at planting because you replanted. And you got to do it over again. And I was crazy enough, I went on social media and said, stop. 76,000 people commented back. Well, I already knew I was nuts, so it didn't bother me. And so we'll start planting beans last year on the 14th, this year on the 22nd. I just told you shouldn't be planting corn in the 22nd, but we planted beans in the 22nd. And our conventional beans were all planted first because the planter was cleaned out. And so it's really convenient to plant them all first. Our conventional beans beat the Roundup Ready beans by 5 bushel all farm average. Now, that was probably because they were planted first. So you and I got to think through, what are the things that we can do to capture in a $10 bean market that kind of an environment and that kind of advantage? I get kind of excited when I see these little guys. We've come a long ways, haven't we, at this stage? We've planted this, and they're up, and they're running good. Let's talk about them and talk about what does this plant need at this stage? We know what. As this little guy germinates, you can see the moisture of the temperature of that soil is 53.2. What do we know about your soil? It's not going to release any phosphorus until what? Phosphates until it's 65 degrees. So how are you and I going to go out and start planting corn on April 17th? If it's not going to have 65 degree soils, that plant's going to do what? It's going to struggle for a nutrient load. And so we've said it for years off this stage. Starters pay. Starter fertilizer pays. And I can see some of you just tensing up a little bit like, oh, great, that's going to be another problem in the planting window I got to take care of. But we know what? Over the years, we would tell you safely 12 to 15 bushel response to starter. Why? Because this little seed, as it grows, it's going to put out its new little seedling roots. Let's just draw it out here. And so you come in here, let's just say you're planting all 1 3/4 inch deep. We're going to plant this little guy, and he's going to get some little seedling roots, and they're going to run, most of the time they run in that seed trench. Once in a while they can bust out, and it starts to put up a mesocotyl, and no matter where you live, if you're Steve Landon here from Australia, or you're Greg Souter from Morton, or you're Tim from Wisconsin, you're going to put a crown on that corn plant at 3/4 inch underground. That's just reality. And then from there, she's going to start to grow up. And so this little plant is going to need some additional, because we know it's 53 degrees. And so if we could put starter in here, it's going to have a place, these little seedling roots, to take a drink of that P, in other words, your phosphates, and it's going to start to really warm up this environment. So starter's just going to advance you 3 weeks of soil temperature. It's just like being 3 weeks later. But it doesn't come free. We understand that. And so if you're going to use 1034O out here, that's a very common fertilizer. Right here is what you're going after. And we know it's going to be about $18 an acre. And all of a sudden you say, yeah, but Banker Potter is going to look down the desk at me and say, prove it. Because it's not just 18. We're going to put $5 extra an acre in zinc. Without zinc, I wouldn't run it. If you say, I'm just going to run starter, I worry for you. We've done research for years. A quart of zinc will make a huge difference in return. White label chelated zinc at a quart. If you want to put a veil in, We were just at a meeting today, and Avail shows quite a response. So now we're up to $28 an acre. And at the kitchen table, Cindy probably should say to Greg, are you sure $28 is going to make a difference? And so at 360, we said, we need to come in and help growers understand what the value of this would be. And so a lot of growers, at the meeting today, I was talking to some growers over noon, and they said, the one said, I believe about 50% of the time starter would pay. I love that he said that. Because my passion here is design technology that can take starter and cut it in half. So if we could take your starter bill down by 50 cents, by 50%, all of a sudden you can afford to do it every year, and when you hit big. Last year in Farm Journal trials, 30 bushel response to starter fertilizer in 2000 spring of 17. Especially where guys were running planters through the 19th to the 26th. Tremendous response to those soils. And so how are we going to cut your inputs in half? Well, let's just talk about it for a second. We know it's $3 an inch. So it's $3 for every inch of starter that you put on. So we got a 30-inch row here, so we're going to have seeds about every 6 inches. And so on a normal system, you're going to come in, dribble all the way down that row, and you're going to be spending that $18. But what if we had the ability every time that a seed came out that we could do the ability where we just put on 3 inches of starter, and it's just right over the seed itself? Let's call that System A. Or what about if we had a system where it knows where every seed is, and if you had a starter attachment off to the side, like a Huckstep shoe or a Yetter or something, and you came out here and you put just 3 inches of fertilizer just where the seed was, so when the little seedling root come out, it's feeding at the dessert table. We'll call that System B. So we'll call that B. And then there's a camp that says, no, Greg. We don't want anything on the seed. We want it off the seed. All right. What if we gave you technology, or you come in and you put a dash of material down, we'll call that C, right bumping up against the seed but not on it? And so I'm excited with the research we're working with. And you can see a dash valve here. And this valve is firing every time a seed comes out of the seed tube. And that squirt you see there is 5 gallon at 7 miles an hour. That's 22 seeds per second. And it's firing it, and it's giving it right on the money. And it's laying it down right where you want it, either off to the side, on the seed, or off the seed. If you look at a Huckstep shoe here, which is off to the side of the seed, you can see the seeds coming out. We'll slow it down here. There went a seed, there went a seed, and it's firing every time that seed comes out. And so we have the ability now to open up a window, and now all of a sudden we're $9 an acre input. The goal for you and I is not to hit the home run as much as we want to. It's just like the good word says, line upon line, precept upon precept. I'm talking about all night long, we're going to add $9 here. We're going to add $10.25 here. Oh, we're going to do conventional seeding, and we're going to add $43 or whatever the number. And when you get all done and you add them up, all of a sudden, banker Potter's frown turns to a smile. It's the little things that we're going after. And we need to focus, and we need to get really good at what we do. Dash is going to go right into your precision equipment. You've got a 2020 monitor. We're going to plug Dash into your SRM that's on your parallel arms, and it's going to be able to run it. It's going to be able to map it. You say, well, Greg, I spent a lot of money, so when I turn corners with my 16-row planter, the seeding stays 31,000 on row 1 through 16 on a sharp corner. Fine. We don't fire until we see a seed. So if the seeds get further apart, fine. If they get closer together, fine. Variable rate does not matter. When the seed comes out, you'll be able to map on field view everything that you want on your liquid itself. And so a 10 bushel gain in a 350 corn market, $18, you're going to put $17. I'll add that to the list. I'll take that $17. And you say, well, wait a minute. If we put dash on, we get another, cut that in half. Now we're at $26. These are the things that are changing the way you and I farm because the OEMs are coming to us for all of a sudden. These are research companies that have high dollar technology and liquids. And they said a farmer can't afford to put it all the way down the trench on every 30-inch row. You couldn't afford it. It would be $56 an acre, but it's wonderful stuff. It's technology that's just being adapted. But they said the minute we can take this new products and we can come in and put it just an inch around that seed, we open up a huge window of opportunity. This gets my motor going because there's going to be lots of opportunity coming down the window, coming down the pike for us. So those are things that are there. In the last 5 years, my relationship has changed with my ag chem. They're super people. Mark Bear and his team down here at Sun Ag, just 3 miles down the road. You couldn't ask for a better team to walk beside you when you farm, no matter what the crop is. But it's changing for us. Because as we diversify, and as we start to look at different opportunities, whether that's conventional beans or conventional corn, we have come out and we said, as for our farm, we've got to have our own sprayer. We've got to be able from day to day to make the decisions we need to make. And so we've invested. And this investment is not inexpensive, but it has changed the way we farm. And so I'm willing to put up my farm numbers and show you exactly what we say. So for our farm, we do multiple passes. I've had seed fields this year. We had a 300-acre seed field. I sprayed it 8 times from the beginning to the end. So we did 2,400 acres on just 300. And so that's just the opportunity. But here's what it is. The average is $8 an acre. It's only $6 an acre to spray chemical in an ag chem, but we got the wide drop in here. We had the undercover fungicide. Didn't have to do the airplane. So we did the math. Our sprayer cost per year is $50,000. Our labor, this sprayer got 560 hours on it this year, brand new. So to put somebody in the butt on the seat, it costs us $11,200. The fuel costs us $42.50. But at the end of the day, as bad as that conversation was with Potter at his banking desk when I said I'm going to buy the Hagie, I ended up netting $70,000 back into the farm account. And that asset changes the way we farm, where we start to add more lines. Because now we're doing our own nitrogen. So we put in our own tank farm, and that's a $60 a ton savings when you buy September 28th through October 5th compared to when you buy April 1st. For Greg, at our rate of nitrogen per corn acres, that's $17 an acre. Add it right here to the bottom line. If you have an asset like that and you're going out and you're saying, well, we want to protect every bushel for plant health, and you understand that gray leaf comes from the bottom up. So we're out in the fields and we're scouting. Today we were at Ken Ferry meeting. He talks about someone on your farm needs to be the pest boss. He talks about it all the time, and we have a pest boss on our team. Aaron is our pest boss. And so that job is the most important on the farm. He knows how many plants came up out of 36,000. He knows the stand of the DeKalb versus 1197 Pioneer. He knows if we had any kind of flea beetle. He knows exactly what's happening in that field. And when we start to see a corn plant here, let's put an ear in here, and then we'll put some leaves on here, and we'll get him all doctored up. So gray leaf starts from the bottom up. And you say, well, I don't believe in fungicides. You know, my neighbor did it, and he said he just paid for the chemical. Could be. You need to know. You need to put out your own test strips. But when I see this, and this leaf came from right here, so it's 2 leaves under the ear leaf. This is your golden ticket right here. The ear leaf you cannot destroy. It's a factory that has to be producing because that's putting grain all over on this ear. And so you're in the field and we're watching the lower leaves, and the minute we see enough of these lesions to cover a quarter, and that would be this leaf, we say go. And the sprayer is going to come in, and we're going to get ready to spray. Because we're going to protect this guy here at all costs, because there's all kinds of money in that. So owning our own asset of our Hagie really makes a difference. Now, we got a young man that is on our harvest team. He's my neighbor. He's also a fly guy. He's crazy. He can do anything. David is just as good as they come. So I put GoPros all over his plane, and you can see that he's out here, and we're doing a side-by-side with the 360 undercover in the airplane. But he runs on our harvest team. He can run a semi, a grain cart. He can do about anything we ask him, and he's one whale of a flyer. I will not ride with him. You couldn't get me in that plane. And we got some great video, and I was holding my breath. I was actually over here in the bottom, right in the tree line. We had a lift up in the air about 50 feet, Jacob and I, and he came over us, and I was like, oh, man. There wasn't that much room between the treetops and his wheels. But there's a cost to this. And so if you can bring the Hagie in, and you can come in with the 360 undercover, now what are we doing? We're down here in the bottom, and we're spraying the underside of the leaves. And we're putting headline amp underneath. We have one nozzle running on the top boom, spraying down, 3 down the canopy spraying up, and it's a game changer. So yes, you're putting $21.35 an acre in a fungicide, but the results are dramatically different. Remember, 60% of the openings in that leaf are on the bottom side. And so you start to look at the water paper here, and you can see the difference. Not that airplanes are bad. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's just other opportunity. And that other opportunity can make quite a difference. This is the Winfield answer plots, and they had all these different sites, and they showed $3.05 bushel for undercover. And now all of a sudden we're back here, and you say, well, that's not big dollars, but that's just another line onto the profit side. And it's just how we manage to take it through. Soybeans, likewise. You can be in, undercover, can do some creative things. In our seed field, and I said we sprayed that 8 times, it was a Liberty seed, so thankfully we could take our undercover, turn it upside down, and we went in that seed field and we sprayed Liberty on water hemp breakthrough in the seed field twice and nailed them. And so there's all kinds of creative things you can do that are out there. Soybeans, look here at our plots, the proving grounds, good beans, check, made really well. There wasn't any disease pressure. I didn't look for much of a response, and we didn't pay for the $20. We lost $8 here for over-the-top boom only. We put undercover and one nozzle on the top boom, and we turned it into $10.67. Excuse me. And so it's the little things that we're talking about that add up. Texas, the sorghum crop's big in Texas. I don't know, we might have somebody here from Texas tonight. Sorghum is well over, almost 5 million acres in Texas alone. Sorghum board come to us and they said, we're done. Sugarcane aphid has come in, and that little booger puts its proboscis in the bottom of a sorghum leaf, and you can't kill him. They were flying airplanes over and running these big wheel sprayers over the top. We come with undercover, and one application we took them out. Same thing down in the Delta. On white flies and cotton this year, undercover took that pest and totally eliminated it. So those are things that are out there. But we know that nitrogen is one of your largest inputs, next to seed cost. Then it comes nitrogen. So how do you and I think about it? And you can say, well, Greg, you know what? It went down this year, and for the first time I pulled out the anhydrous bar, and I gave her a good shot. None of you would ever admit that, but I saw my neighbors. I've never seen so many tanks on the road. And it was not 50 degrees, but that's another story. So, as we talk about, let's draw this little guy again. Remember, we put out the little seedling roots, and we come up here, and then 3/4 of an inch below the ground, we have that crown. What's happening here? That crown starts to shoot crown roots. And these guys are really interesting. The beautiful thing about corn is it's repeatable. Whatever country, whatever state, whatever town you live in, we know exactly where crown root 1 and 2 are if we know where the seed is. Now, we put starter in here, and we got this guy pretty happy. So he's got a big smile on. Now we're talking about nitrogen. We're going to come in, we're going to put a 32% on, and we're saying, if this whiteboard is heaven, where would the corn like to have it? Obviously, you could go out and broadcast it. You can band it. You could put anhydrous on the previous fall. I can tell you right now, I'm not a once-and-done guy. And there was tons of acres done. I talked to a guy in Iowa. Yeah, he said, we just put 250 on last fall. He said, I'm done. I don't understand it. I mean, you'll never convince me that his 250 is going to finish the race. If he has a 2015, he's going to end up putting another 150 on. I can guarantee you. You're 10 months out from what you need. So I don't know how we ever get smart enough. So let's talk about where would we put it. If this is the root system, and you can see all the crown roots here, and if we know where they're at, how long is this little guy going to last till V5, so boot high corn? That plant lives off of mama seed starch. It lives all off of this little picnic basket right here. And then there's coming a day when that dries up, and then the crown roots have to take over. There's 5 sets of crown roots that come out, 1s and 2, and they're kind of unique. And there's 4, and they come out in a wagon spoke. So that's 1. 2 comes out right in between. So 2 comes out in here. And then the way God created corn, 3 comes right over the top of 1. You just look at that, and I've never seen it any different than this. It's always this way. And then 4 comes out over 2, and 5 comes out over 3. And so when 3 comes out, that's your water line. This is the guy who goes as deep as corn is tall, and his job is to bring in water, and when water comes in, so does nutrients. But these little guys are your high dollar roots. Because this is the trick. Nature has a cruel streak. And when the mama seed dries up and hands the baton in the race to crown root 1 and 2, it had better be ready to take it. And it better be ready to perform, because at that exact same time at V5 is when corn is deciding how many rows around am I going to be this year. 16, 18, 14. Every row is worth 10 bushel to you. So if you and I, as growers, stumble here, and when we talk about feeding corn, we can lose 20 bushels so fast. It's a hidden loss. You don't know. Probably good that we don't know. But you would know if you took and looked at an ear of corn, and you looked at the butt. So when you peel your corn down, the rows have to line up straight. You should put a ruler on them. If they come down here an inch from the bottom, they scramble, and they were 18 on the butt and 16 up above, you lost 20 bushel times 350. And if I'm Potter, I'm going to give you the snake eye. And I'm going to look over at the desk at you and say, why did that happen? Because once 1 and 2, so if we were going to come in and put nitrogen on in the perfect spot, where would you put it? Well, I would use the planter. The planter, to me, is the ideal applicator, bar none. It's a pass that you're already making. If I'm going to hire Sun Ag to come in and broadcast some 28 on here, I'm going to spend $6 to $7, $8 an acre. And so if I can do this for free on 1,000 acres, that's $6,000 for every 1,000 acres. Last night I was talking to a guy in Indiana. He's got 1,400 acres. It cost him $8 to have the co-op come in and broadcast it. He said, you mean to tell me on my 1,400 times 8? He said, well, gee whiz, I could put the whole bandit system on and have money left over. True. And so if you're going to come in and put it on, I would put it right here. Now, the reason we wouldn't go deep is because we've been in the planter business for years and years, and disc openers, every quarter inch, dramatically increases the downforce required to penetrate the soil. And so if we're going to do it right, why wouldn't we use nature? And so we're just going to come in here and go 3/4 to an inch deep, and we're going to come 3 inches to each side because we want to have really happy corn. And we're going to put a band here. Remember, a band of nitrogen is 2x the value of broadcast. You say, wait a minute. You mean if I broadcast 120 pounds of 28, 60 pounds with the planter is equal to it? Yeah. Why? Well, because you're protecting it. When you put it in a band, Mike and his team, microbials and his team, can't digest it all. You put it out across residue, soybean ground or corn residue, you're 120, and the microbials wake up, your corn's going to have a bad day. And you're going to scramble your ears. And so the sweet spot is right here, and we let nature, water, dilute it, and dilution takes place, and we create a water balloon. Nitrogen immediately starts to move down to the profile when it starts to rain. And as it moves through and creates a dilution of a water balloon of nitrogen, all of a sudden, we got roots, ones and twos, that are feeding. And I looked at them under a microscope many times, and when they get in the nitrogen band, they go nuts. The hair roots that amass off of a 1 or a 2 crown root is amazing. It looks like the hair on your dog's back. It just explodes. And that plant starts to feed on that. And you got yourself in the sweet spot. And so you don't have to go 2 by 2 down in here and start to expend a lot of energy. So let's talk about what does it look like. So we went out and we said, look, let's design a system. And my goal was to make it so simple and so safe and so cost-effective that all of you just say, I think I'm going to do that. Because the reality is, at the most, 20% of the growers in the nation put nitrogen on with a planter and a band. I want to take that to 70 to 80, and it can happen. And if it does, we are going to be extremely profitable because less will raise more. So the Bandit, we showed it at the Farm Progress Show here back here in the closing. The number one thing for me is, whether it was precision planting or 360, I always told our engineers, we shall do no harm. In other words, I never wanted to take you backwards. I always want to take you a mother's may I step ahead, giant step. And so I said, we got to be careful that we never change the depth. We never influence closing. So we came in here and we added 5 inches to your row unit, and we spring-loaded this so that it's got a spring on it. So as you see it here, you can see there's a torsion spring here. You can see that I've been in the firmer business for years of poly. And so we have a hose guide that's a poly device that's riding with tension on the ground, delivering liquid right in the groove. So this has a toe in. And the reason it's towed in, so when you and I create a seed trench, we run them all over the years. And so when you and I come in here and we put a disc in here, I do not want to make this close. So if we put a disc right here, it would immediately envelope this close, and the danger is the dry dirt on the top goes in with the seed. So we put a toe in, and when we put a toe in, now the trench stays open, and it won't collapse in. And so we're going to create a trench that's a 1/2 inch wide, 3/4 to an inch deep, and we're going to put that nitrogen right there. Your seed's going to be down here, and we're going to immediately intercept where the corn roots are. So we know that it has to be spring-loaded because, I'm sorry, one slide away. We're going to put it so that it's about 2 3/4 to 3 inches off to the side. So you're going to be able to put sulfur with it. It's going to be seed safe. And then when we come in and we hit any kind of a rock, we're going to have that disc move up and over, and seeding depth stays in the sweet spot at all times. And it's going to come with a chain. I'm a big believer in chains. Cheapest insurance you can ever get. I had dealers calling me and say, well, Craig, in high-speed planters, at 10 mile an hour, the chain's never going to hit the ground. Oh, yeah, it will. I know. I filmed it at 13. I got proof. And it just hangs in there, and it runs, and it creates. How many times have you and I seen, when we go into a field, you know what a bathtub ring of residue is, right? So you go into a field, and it had a wet spot, and it dried up. But in that field, there was this pond out there, and it left a bathtub ring of residue, and this is about 25 feet long. And you're coming along here with the planter, and when you come through there, it's mud. And the V-trench stays open. You go back in the dry. The wheel's just about clean after you went 300 feet, and then you went through the bathtub ring again. You mudded all the gauge wheels up, and you left it open. If you and I are pulling a chain, we will raise corn in an open trench. That's why we do it. It covers up all kinds of problems that you might be running into. So a band, if we say the perfect place to put the first wave of nitrogens on the planter, let's see what some of the tests show. So this is our proving grounds. And we got a block of called dryland corn here. This corn over here gets irrigated, and we simulated 2015 exactly. So every day it rained in 2015, this system ran. Yes, we put 9 inches on in 2 days because that's what we had there at the dairy. And so we simulated a lot of water compared to dry land. Just make a note of this dry strip right here. See that little strip? Just keep that tucked away in the back of your mind. And so we come in and I said, look, let's get smart about this. The year before, I wanted to raise yellow corn for the conference, for the Proving Ground Conference, so I only put 80 units of nitrogen on, and the corn never turned yellow, and it really made me look stupid and mad, and I was just ticked, because I wanted the yellow corn out so I could take Y-drop and run it in yellow corn and prove to you guys that in 48 hours we can flash it green and save it. And I couldn't do it. So this year I said, well, let's get smart about it. Let's just put 30 pounds on with the band on the planter. So we came in, we just put 30 units of N on. Can you see it? Where's that? Nope, you can't. It's down here. It's 120 feet down here. I watched it all year. It wouldn't yellow up. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. We harvested it and made 223 bushel on 30 pounds. So in the 0.7 club, I am president at 0.13. Now, I don't have enough guts at the Rother Farm or the Proving Grounds is to only use 30 pounds, but I should. Because mineralization took place, and that corn really never had a bad day. Well, okay, so you can say, well, this year, but guys, that was serious. That's documented with a weight cart. So you say, well, why is that? And we test all of our acres of ISNT. Dr. Mulvaney at the University of Illinois, he's an environmental scientist. He's the genuine tree hugger, earth muffin, and he designed this test so you could go out all across the country. It's called ISNTs, and you pull samples 12 inches deep, and you send it into them, and they tell you what's in your nitrogen bank account. How much organic N do you have? And it's hard to get rid of organic N. And they measure it. So if you're 400 and above, if you're above 450 to 500, you really don't need any nitrogen to raise corn. Maybe 30 units would get you out the gate, but you can raise some serious amount of corn. And so where we had this test is right here, where these dashes are, and that's 400 parts per million of organic N, and it's no mystery, is it, why 30 pounds of N raised 220 bushel corn. And so you've got to think about this. These are the kind of tests. It costs you about $8.50 an acre. Smith Labs in Illinois does it. I would recommend it. If I was going to rent the neighbor's farm, I would sneak across the fence. Something's in-house tonight that's not good. Next year, this will not happen, John. Always blame marketing. So, how often do you need to test? We've had our test run now for 10 years. We're going to retest because the day Ferry was talking about it. We need to retest and see if the ISNTs have changed. It's hard to change them. ISNTs are put in there by manure. Livestock organic N is what that's measuring. So if you had a neighbor's farm that had 230 parts per million of organic N and you were going to cash rent it, I would probably rent it for maybe $185 an acre. There, thanks. If I was doing and knew that the farm had 450, I would come in and pay 300. How could I pay 300 to 350? Because you don't have to have any N. You look at this green spot up there, that farm, that spot there needs no N. So when we look at these tests, we take nitrogen from here and here. We rob Peter to pay Paul. And we lower the whole N in our farm because of that. And so those are things you look at. So if we're going to make this an applicator, we got to think about carrying it. The marketplace is a little confused, and it's hard to find on the more modern tractors. And you look at this system, and this makes my heart pound because I do a lot of road work. Our farm's spread out 50 miles. I go from down to Manitou all the way to Bloomington to Johns. 50 miles on the road. And it'll make your heart pump. This here system is 17 feet, 5 inches wide. And if the soccer mom's coming at you and she's on the phone and the kids are in the back seat complaining, then I'm nervous. And so we come out, we said, look, we've got to make it seamless. Let's design some simple tanks to put on 8,000 series tractors that are absolutely no wider than the duals, but carry 700 gallon. Make it so you can see out of it easily. So I want all of you to climb up in the cab here afterwards while you're eating that extra dessert and take a look, because we said if we can position them so the weight goes more to the rear axle, keep this tractor well balanced instead of all out front, then we're going to hit a home run. We're going to make it easier. I've got to make it easy for you to jump in because I want you really to understand the value. And so what are we going to do in these farms? Not all of us can have a second planter. So I start running this bean planter the same day we run corn, and we run hard. You say, well, we could buy a high-speed planter. Well, that's true. You can. But you're still going to do what? You're going to have to sit here and load sometime. You can only carry so much. And so you look at our operations, we're carrying 1,000 gallon or 950 on the tractor. We're carrying 400 a starter here. And so I have to stop pretty often. We're using 23 gallon. And so I stop at least 10 times a day for 12 minutes at best. See, the vision is when I'm coming to the truck, as I'm planning up that last strip, I'm thinking, he's going to get out of the cab. He's going to get the line held. He's got the motor running, and the valve is open, but not this. And he's ready, and when Greg, I'm envisioning NASCAR. And I get there, and he's not out of the cab. He's still listening to music. He comes running around, pulls and pulls and pulls and pulls. Finally, it starts. By this time, I've got the hose hooked up. I've got the lids open, and I'm waiting, looking back, and he forgot to open the valve here, but he's a great guy. And he runs back, and he gets that opened up. So we're barely 12 minutes. And so if I do 45 acres an hour, which I do when I'm planting, that 120 minutes a day, that's 90 acres a day of extra corn, or I could have done some soybeans. And so we say, well, how can we get the 30% gain? And like I told you, I think kind of weird. And I kept thinking about how we take grain away from combines. I said, well, why wouldn't we own gators? Like pickup. I mean, we must have 9 gators between the dairy and everybody. I said, why wouldn't we take a gator, put a stainless 300-gallon tank on it, and chase the planter? They do it in the Air Force all the time. Line the wheels up so there's no additional compaction. Take 300-gallon, pump it off on this guy so that he's got it. Now he just pumped over. It takes us about 2 minutes and 53 seconds to give him 300-gallon. And now he's coming up to the end. So when he pulled in this field, he only had 75 gallon in the tank. I said, don't stop. I'll load and catch you. And we keep it going. And all of a sudden, we take a planter and we raise it by 30% efficiency. Is it perfect? I don't know if it's going to be perfect. But I like the idea of keeping weight off. Unfortunately, this is my field in the early days of 1790 with pinch rows. You know what I mean by pinch rows? That's where the tires on duals of the tractor. So you have your front duals, you have your rear duals, and then you have your planter tires. And over time, the industry's done pretty good at this. And this pinch row really gets sick. It really gets sick. This right here is 67 bushel less than the wings due to a really tough spring. It's an extreme. The whole field was 23 bushel less due to the center of the planter. And you say, well, I don't know if I believe that, Greg. Well, this is back in 2015. Some pretty soft, stable soils, so they're pretty suspect for compaction. This planter did not have tracks. Most of our planters have tracks, and we have track tractors. This is a track tractor pulling a heavy planter, CCS, with wheels right next to each other. So this is the center of the planter. Wing, wing, center, wing, wing, center, wing, wing, center, wing, wing, center. You get the feel? On a really good day and a really good spring, 8 to 10 bushel in the center of the plant are lost. That's just reality. On a really bad spring like this, it's probably about 23 bushel loss. And so it's reality. So you say, well, what's my options? Well, you could write a check for $40,000 to put tracks on. Deere's now offering a set of Camoplast tracks. Oh, they're not Camoplast, Saucy. And so there's options out there for you to think about. So those are things that you and I have to get through. And then for years, we were doing what? We weren't doing once and done. We split a side dress. And so we would come in with a Kohler cart, and we would go down the center of the row. And after we started doing that, I was watching that. In 2012, it was a bloodbath. And so in 2012, what happened? We had our corn here, 20-inch rows, what we were in. And we came down with a Kohler cart on June 7th, and we side dressed in here, and this ground scored, and we opened that up. And when we opened that up, that was painful. And then it got so dry that it cracked this way. So every 20 inches, we had an ice block. This is a 20 by 20 inches. And I cracked, in 2012, it was so dry, we cracked every number 3 crown root coming down through that. I had Ferry there, and I said, Ken, this field is really making me sick. I said, how much did this cost me to have this ground open up where we run the Kohler? And we dropped a spade in 18 inches deep. We just dropped it right in. It was 18 inches, almost 20 inches deep. I could stick my hand in this far. And you could look in and see all the roots were snapped. He said 50 bushel. And that's what drove me to drip. He said, when he said 50 bushel, I said, if I put drip tape in, and I put a tape in every 40 inches, I think I can keep this ground from cracking, and it will. You can keep the ground from cracking open, and you won't snap your roots. So we started looking at this, and I said, well, wait a minute. Look at all the water. We call it stem water around the plant itself. And I said, we need to document. This is a heavy fog. This is a really wet morning. I went in the field right across, it's here in Morton, and took pictures of that. I said, what if we would go out, and we designed kind of a poor man's from Menards plumbing system, and we put PVC around every stalk. We brought the irrigation system over exactly at a 1/2 inch. We put some containers on the 15-inch mark, and then we watched and see, because you realize how a corn plant, as that water hits the leaves, it funnels it all into the stalk and down. And guess what? It is what? 8 times more around the root than in the center of the row. So if you had 1/10 of an inch of rain last night, your root got 8/10. And this gave us the confidence to say, we need to stop putting nitrogen in the center of a 30 or a 20-inch row, and we need to reposition the nitrogen right next to the stalk where the root is. And we need to see what kind of response we can get. And you say, well, wait a minute, the nitrogen's on top. Yeah, it is. And I've got so many acres of research, it doesn't scare me at all. In the South, we had 42 days without rain after Y drop ran, and we still beat the Kohler and what it did. And you say, well, how can that be? And so Dr. Mulvaney, the same guy that does ISNT, the environmentalist, he mixed up N15 for us. N15 just nuclear N. And we went out in corn that was right at waist tall, V8, and 30-inch corn, Kohler versus Y drop. And where the corn was in the center of the row, we put 100-pound side dress, and over here is our plants, and then we run Y drop on both sides of the stalk. Because year after year, we get a tremendous response to Y drop versus Kohler, and we said, where's it coming from? And so the nuclear N you can trace in a lab at any time for years, actually. It's out there forever. And you can trace it. Is it in the stalk? Is it in the leaf? Is it in the ear? Is it in the tassel? Is it in the root? Or is it in the soil? And the exact same amount of Kohler N compared to Y drop. Y drop took up 25% more of nitrogen in the plant, which in return drove 6.6 bushel more. Same N, just compared to. And you can see the difference. And you can see where it comes from. And so as you watch it run here, the side dress bar, we've revolutionized the way Kohlers are run in corn. It's a simple, simple thing to put on a Y drop that has the ability to get back and out of the way if it hits the ground, but it's putting nitrogen right beside, and the 3-year average makes my heart pound. So I'm going to stand here and tell you this 6 bushel is real. And we did the N15 again this year. They just don't have the research done yet. It's taken the grad students a long time to grind all the corn and document it. This is exciting. When we talk about the little things that make a difference, this is what we're referring to. I'm well aware there's lots of urea out there. Co-ops love this. It's so much easier just to drive a spinner buggy through. And I get that question all the time. Greg, have you ever tested it against Y drop? Yes, we have. And so you can see him spinning through. Remember when I told you to remember that dry strip and that picture of corn? So you can see the urea pellet here, down the whirl. You can see what the effect of that is. And you can look there and see, so you could see that it took place. And then we took it to yield. Not that 243 bushel is bad. That's good corn. But right next to it, with the Y drop, 15.3 bushel difference. And those are things that we're talking about that make quite a difference. So as we think about, there must be something interesting in our PowerPoint when we get to a slide like this. You just think it's that nervous or what? There, we can see it now. Don't move. So this is 4 years. Trust me. This is 4 years of data. And we talk about what does Y drop do? I told you if this white piece of paper was heaven for corn, what would you do? And I would do this simply. I would do a planter pass of a band. I'd put on 85 to 87 units of nitrogen, and I would wait. Why would I wait? I want to see what nature's going to do. I want to see what the year's going to look like. I want to get really smart. And so over time, and then when corn gets about head high, I'm going to come in of Y drop. And we're going to take the ability to say, we become really smart. It's kind of like betting on the horse after the race. And you say, you know what, I think horse number 6 looks like it can really run. And 3 minutes after the race, you go to the ticket window and they pay you for picking horse number 6. That's exactly what's happening in the corn. Well, this really got silent. And so, boy, you know, in the day we live in, flip charts are pretty sweet, Tim. I like them a lot. So how close did we get to disaster in 2000? Since the slides won't work, I'll draw them for you. I know what they look like. And so you think about 2012, and you look at how the year went, and then you think about 2017, and here in April, we got a lot of water, and then it got really scary. And you look at the difference, and you can see it here. And black line here is 2017. The yellow line is 2012. And as you look at it, you see that actually we were so close in this area to a disaster. It's unbelievable. And I was nervous. We had corn and heat, and I saw we had a great spike. We loaded it up back here. Man, it is really struggling. We loaded that corn up back here in April. Remember how we filled the whole profile? We stopped planting for almost, 8 days? We had so much rain. And then the rest of the season, it really become hard. But yet you look, you say, well, what's the difference? Why didn't we have the drought of 2012? Look at the daytime highs. And you look at the daytime highs, and you see in 2012, we were peaked out. And then you see in 2017, we were down in here. Remember, corn cannot survive over nighttime temperatures above 80 degrees. nighttime temperatures were really cool. And what did we have to finish the race in corn? We had sunshine and we had cool days. And our ET rates, in other words, what we pulled up to the ground just went crazy. And it went and it got out. We're just going to get out of these pictures, guys, and get back to something maybe where we're running. And so, there it is. I think it's good as long as I don't have any kind of a spreadsheet up. And so, the difference in these 2 years, we got nip and tuck. I didn't sleep well. I knew we were on the dangerous line, but I really liked the way the high temperatures and the humidity difference was. And sunshine's the name of the game. Fort County from here is just up north of here. And what happened there? Well, they had a lot of rain. And when you have a lot of rain and high humidity, you get a lot of cloudy days. What kind of corn did they harvest in Fort County in that area? About 150 to 160 bushel. What was it in Tazewell County? About 260. 100 bushel difference. Now, that doesn't mean that Fort County farmers are bad farmers. It just means they took a bad drawing. They got a bad hand to play with, didn't they? And that's a painful thing. And so, when this grower come in with his planter, and he had 80 units on the planter, and then he came back, right? And he came back, and then he's in here doing what? He's finishing it. He's got what? Head-high corn. You can just start to see some tassels there. And now he's in putting on another 80 units, and he's going to raise some serious amount of corn. So let's look at the last 5 years for Greg. For years, our yield goal has been 240. We were applying at least 250 pounds of N. Our target was a 1.0 pounds of N to bushel. In the last 3 years, where have we gone? We've gone to where it's 0.75. And our farm is now putting on, applying 180 pounds versus 250, 240. And our yields have spiked. And they've gone through the roof. And so as we look at it here, this will be our farm numbers. We've been able to take 60 pounds of N and add 10 bushel across the board. For every 1,000 acres of corn Greg has, I put in my pocket $58,000. I'm not scared to go into Banker Potter and sit there and say, you know what I need to do? I need to buy a Hagee. I need to put Y drops on. I need to replace my Kohlers, my side dress bar. And then we took our agronomy team. We said, let's just look at the data from growers. These 9 farmers in 5 different states sent in their whole farm averages. We averaged their whole farming operation system. They ended up averaging 26 less pounds of N with the system of a planter, a base plus of a planter, and then a Y drop, and they ended up averaging 8.3 bushel more. So, I get kind of excited when I start to see these kind of growers. All of you realize Dave Hulot, who he is, out of Charles City, Virginia. And Dave is the type of grower that's pretty humble. And when you talk to him, you know, I get growers, I do grower meetings, and I've had growers tell me, well, Greg, I don't believe that a kernel of corn can make 500 bushel yield. Really? Dave Hulot this year did what? He won the National Corn Growers at 542.2 bushel. So if Greg raised 260 and pretty excited about it, I'm not even 50% there. Love to hate that guy. Talked to him last year in February at Louisville Machinery Show, and he said, oh man, he said, I had a terrible fall. I said, oh, I knew he raised pretty good corn. I said, what happened? He said, I had the wrong field. He said, the contest field. I was in another field that wasn't a contest field. He said, Greg, the monitor was hitting 640 bushel for long stretches. And he said, I was so mad. I kept saying, I know what's going to happen when I get in the contest field. He said, it was over 600. He said, I was just fried. He said, I got in the contest field, and I went 502. I said, yeah, that's a bad day, Dave. Here's some money. Go get ice cream. And, you know, like I said, how does he do it? His CECs are what? His CECs are 4 and 5. You understand what I just said? He has a CEC rating of 4 to 5. His neighbor was here. He said, my CECs range from 3 to 8. You take that times 10, and that's the most nitrogen you can ever put on at one time and not lose it. What does Dave do? Dave does many, many passes of spoon feeding. Mark Roscramp here from down here in the local area, great young farmer. Said, I had a field that went over 300 bushel with wide drop this year, 75% of our acres. Next year, I'm going to do 100% of my acres if I can get it done. He farms a lot of acres. But I really like Todd Kimbrell. Young Texas grower. We work with him a lot. He basically said, we put out 64 units in of wide drops at V9 and V10, and we saw anywhere from 33 to 61 bushel increase in side-by-side tests. The reason I like this young man, he took Texas dry ground this year and raised 272.3 bushels and won the state of Texas. I'm proud of him. These are guys that are making a difference. It's line upon line. It's the little things that they're doing that make quite a difference for us. But you say, well, if wide drops, I got my Deere sprayer, and it's kind of hard to see the ground. Well, 360 guide system is out here, and we got it running over here in a test stand, and you can see it there, and you can see exactly how it runs. And we simply cheated the system. We're using the wands in the bottom to go up to the top globe and say, no, 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 no. You think your AB line, you need to be over here on top of the corn, but you need to scoot over 3 inches to the left. And we're just changing the single coming in the globe, and the power unit that does the steering follows the wand and not the AB line. And so it's a very automatic system at high speed that you can get into. Then the glide itself. The Australia boys told me this is named wrong, John. They said this is a kangaroo tail. That's what he told me. So you got to change the name. 360 Glide's not a bad name for marketing, but I like kangaroo tail. This is nothing more than keeping your wide drops under a tall canopy so you don't have to stress, say, where are they at? It just gives you boom control. You can see it running through here. So as it runs, and this time the wand was right in front of the wheels, but it's in the center of the sprayer now. And so it's guiding that through. This is in a seed field, pretty high dollar crop. I get pretty nervous if we had anything run over, and you can see that it's running through some pretty hilly, rough ground. Right here it's not too bad. Look at the boom moving. So the glide's there running, and you can see the boom constantly moving instead. See it up and down. Look, I'm looking over there at the left wing, and you can see that it's helping itself through. And so these are things that are out there. The fall products themselves have had a pretty good year. This gets my motor running pretty good, saving corn with yield savers. We got chain roll that goes out and helps you analyze and make more nitrogen out of the residue. Then we got, of course, the bullets. And there's 3 different series out next year. We got a chrome that's high wear. We got the fabricated that gives you some real durability, and then we got the heavy-duty braze that you see there, and it can take any kind of a hit from any kind of a stone wherever you live. And so those are things that are out there. Next year we'll be prototyping the case head, the case corn head, and the gearing off North Star. We're going to have chain roll out into those corn heads. And so I'm excited about where we're going to go in the future. But at the end of the day, this is what I want you to remember. You and I, there's nothing sacred in our farming operation. You're going to take a really bright flashlight, and you're going to shine it in every corner, and you're going to say, do I really need to, whatever that is, or do I need to buy a second planter so I can do soybeans and corn at the same time? Maybe I only need 1 ripper tractor. I don't know, you fill in the blank, but you and I are going to have to follow this process if we're going to be successful. At the end of the day, this I know. There is tremendous opportunity. You are in the perfect spot. What you're going through right now is going to make you the absolute best corn and bean grower that ever was. There was nothing worse. In the year I was at Decatur Farm Progress Show, and corn was $7.50. Growers walked in, and you'd talk to them about their system, they said, doesn't matter. I'm in the money. And they're not there today. You, on the other hand, You understand what it's going to take. And don't make it a job, make it fun. Your job, my job as a dad, is to inspire my young boys that are my family to walk beside me in farming because agriculture needs them. And we will feed the world. And I'm so proud you're here tonight. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. John, you got some questions?
Sure do.
Did electricity knock your iPad out?
Not this one. I made sure this one worked.
Okay, good.
Don't get me up here. But you went a little over your allotted time. I'm wondering why you went long.
Yeah, we'll talk later. I told these guys in the front row right over here, I said, you want to see Dad get lit up, you let this thing go back and forth all night long. I'll see you later, Timbo. And we'll...
I think I stayed around for a long time tonight. But we got some mean guys in the audience. The first question is, when are you going to get a decent AV guy?
I don't know. When should we?
Big crowd, so I know sometimes people don't want to raise their hand, but I have the mic. I'm happy to pass it to you so you can ask a question for Greg. But the text number up here, you sent some good questions in, so we'll cover those. Any questions to start off with?
Somebody take the lights up so I can see hands. Take the lights up if we can. So
on your planter nitrogen application, do you pretty well go to the high end of your CEC capabilities? Is that what you'd recommend for everybody else? Go to the high end of your CEC capabilities?
Well, it's a good question. So he's saying, you know, because I'm mystified when anhydrous got cheap this fall and we had a stretch of really good weather and all the bars come out of the shed for the first time in the last 3-4 years. And guys were putting on, in this area, your CECs are 15. The most they could be is 23, and a lot of them are 11. So put a 0 besides that. And if you're out there putting on 235 pounds of anhydrous, I worry for you. Because you just flushed 90, well, not quite, what is that? 85 pounds just went down the toilet. And I don't understand that. And it went in the tiles. And you got all kinds of regulation coming down the pike. Anybody here from Minnesota? Raise your hand if you are. You got Minnesota in the crowd? You got a new law coming down the pike. It's being written right now. Take a look at it. They're going to take anhydrous out. And they're writing it. Illinois already has laws. We don't know it. How many of you read the nitrogen handbook from Illinois? I've never read it. I know what it's going to say. And they're getting very concerned. Our P levels in the Gulf and our phosphates and our nitrogen is going to be serious. So what would I do on the planter? I believe on the planter, what we really, excuse me, what we want to do is get us to the second stage. And so for us, we know that if we band it and that we're somewhere in that 85 to 100 pounds of nitrogen, that's going to take us well into B10 corn. And so when we get to that stage, for us, we test. So once a week I go out, I pull nitrates, I put them in our little soil scan, and I'm watching. And I'm waiting for the number to get down to 10 parts per million of nitrates. And when it hits that, I say, go. And the Heggie and the Y-drop start to run. So our system is 85 with the planter, corn on beans. If it's corn on corn, it'll be 125, so I'll put a little bit out broadcast just to help us go. I have had 60 pounds on one side of the planter a lot without any hesitation. So that could get you to 120. You're going to stop a little more often. But I'm not scared at 120 pounds with the planter. I think you got to, it depends what your CEC and your sands and your clays and what that is. You might want to walk into that. But the second pass then for us is going to be the Y-drop. And then if we need a third pass, we can do that. We always add sulfur. The question is, do we add sulfur? 10 to 1 ratio. 10 to 1. If we got 20 gallons of 32%, you're going to have 2 gallons of sulfur, okay? You're going to keep track. So it's always 10 to 1. So in our case, we're putting on 24 gallons of 32 at the planter. 2.4 gallons of that mix is going to be sulfur. So thiazole. Side dress, same thing. Anytime N goes on, we're going to have sulfur. So we're just going to walk our way into success with corn. All of us got to be in the 0.7 if we're going to survive in a 325 to 375 corn market. You can't be putting on a pound of N to bushel and live. You can probably live in about a 0.6 in all reality. But you're going to have to learn that. You're going to have to walk it down. You're going to have to know your hybrids. And you're going to use technology that's available to you to test. You're not going to stumble. You're not going to have a disaster. You'll always have time to react. But you just can't go out and just blanket it on and hope. Hope is a terrible strategy in the market we're in. So great question. Yes, right down the center row. Got to have it. So the question is, what we recommend for a stabilizer? Do we put a stabilizer on? We don't with the planter, and I usually don't with my Y drop because my corn's shaded. So most of the time we're in a Y drop, we're V10, V12. And at that state, I'm not going to use it. You know, I'll just put the extra dollars in it or just save it. If I was going to put it on a V6, so if we're going to do Y drop on corn here and we're going to get a lot of sunshine, I'd use Agrotane Plus. And I'd put that on, and it just gives you, it's going to give you about 14 more days of relaxation. It just helps your nerves. You're just going to feel better. It's one of those things. Yes, right here, second row.
Whenever you're talking about doing that soil sampling with the environmentalist tree hugger guy,
The ISNT.
the ISNT, how does that differ from your organic matter readings?
It's different than organic matter. Organic matter drives ISNTs, but what really drives ISNT is previous history of manure. Previous history of N put on an organic state. And it's hard to farm it out. If you've got a 500 ISNT, you're just pretty much on top of the world. I mean, you're not going to farm it out. Walter Brothers have won the Illinois National Corn Growers year after year. They had a feedlot for years. There's an old boy here from Iowa the first night. Hated that guy. 3,500 acres and 3 miles. 6,000 head of steers. Organic matters are now 7. Since his granddad, they've had steers, and they put dry manure on. He said, we bale a third of the acres of stalks, run them through the big sheds, and take it all out, coat it with manure. He said we put on about 30 to 40 pounds of N, and we raised 275 bushel corn. I said, you can leave. So that farm, I don't know what its ISNT's in, but I'm going to tell you they're 550 to 600.
So in that situation, just putting on the corn,
I would put a little bit of nitrogen on to get it. We don't run it out early. The worst thing you can do is run corn out at V4. You put that corn under stress, you will set on less rows around. I promise you will. I have seen it. Cold snap can put on less rows. Tillage pass can put on less rows. If the crown roots are starting to come out and they come down and hit a layer right when you're handing the baton to them from the seedling root, and they turn on a layer and run sideways, 9 to 7 bushel. I've seen it. We tested it. In the years of precision, we used to run you through the cornfield, and I would intentionally run a finisher, a soil finisher versus vertical tillage, and we'd watch the roots turn, and we'd look at the ear, and you could see where it'd scramble 1.5 inches up, and it'd lose 2 rows or 20 bushel. So you don't control everything. Environment is some of it, but you and I can control, we better do, or I'm going to be Potter, and I'm going to look down across the desk at you and say, why are you doing that? So if I had a manure operation, a dairy, there's a family of mine close to me, cousins are in the crowd of a dairy. They don't need hardly any fertilizer. Over the years, that dairy, they raise tremendous crops. I don't know, Cap, I bet you don't spend more than $60 an acre in total inputs. And so he's in the driver's seat. And so if you have that situation, but for those of us that don't, I have ISNTs of 230. That's a really bad day. You're going to put on a lot of nitrogen to raise 230 bushel corn. That's just the facts. That's just reality. And so we manage it accordingly. And variable rate. Variable rate is the answer. John, you got a question?
Long-term, down the road for Illinois or any of the ISA affiliates, do you see livestock coming back to the operations to try to diversify an operation and to provide more nutrients?
Well, absolutely. Since you asked it, I'll just get personal and tell you. When I look from here 5 years ahead, what's Greg going to do? We're going to get really close relationship with hog producers. We're going to put up finished buildings on the larger farms, and we're going to start putting finished manure on. I don't like nursery manure. I wouldn't walk across the stage for it. But for a hog finishing system, I would. And so that's what we're going to do. I want to cut my cost. The analysis that we've seen is worth about $185 an acre manure value versus commercial fertilizer value. That gets my motor running. And so there will be regulation in the future because the law says by 2025 we have to cut the Gulf of Mexico bloom of phosphate nitrates that's raising all the allergy in the Gulf of Mexico by 50%. That's impossible because you got the city of Chicago, you got Des Moines, Iowa, you got all the cities that are dumping all of what? They remove all their nitrates out of the water treatment in Iowa. And then what do you think they do with it after they get it all removed out? They go right to the other side of the city and they dump it back in. And they had the guts to sue the farmers up north. The farmers, thank goodness that lawsuit got taken care of. The farmers should have immediately sued the lady in Des Moines that was on the TV channel going, yep, about farmers, and sued her for pollution. So we need to take care of our own house. We need to be taking care of erosion in that. But I can tell you my tiles are flushing nitrates. And so I just know this. I'm positioned, as much as I hate to think about it, when the ASCS office in Tazewell County tells me, Greg, you can only put on 160 pounds of N or 150 pounds of N this year. And there's the nitrogen Nazis out in Ohio. There's people that go around IRS. Ken Ferry's going out to Maryland right now, and there's a case out there, hundreds of thousands of dollars of a fine to the farmer. He got caught. And he's going to pay it. And the attorneys are fighting over the city, over the state of Maryland, the Chesapeake Bay area. So there's going to come a day when they say this, and when they do, I'm ready. Everything I'm thinking about is how I get my planter fine-tuned, my wide drop fine-tuned. I might not raise 260, but I'll take you on with this kind of a system with the planter and right beside the stalk, and we might raise 175 on 100 pounds of N. We're going to have to get ready. Until then, we're not going to worry about it. We're going to go for it now. I would have never believed in 2017 we'd raise more corn than we did in 2016. So 2018, I am pumped. It's going to be fun. We're going to go for it. John?
Are you replacing your AMS with the diazole in the band?
We are still using AMS in the fall. Why are we doing that? So we're trying to break down on our corn fields, we're trying to break it down. So we will put on about 40 units of N of AMS. It's out of Decatur. And then we also using some sulfur. We need about 26 pounds of sulfur comes out of that. And that helps break down. That feeds Mike. That's ammonium. The ammonium, NH4, is what Mike and his team really like. They'll feed on nitrates, but we're breaking down residue as fast as we can. I don't put any on bean stubble. So we don't want to get too long, John. We got a lot of dessert to eat.
Couple more. Question on fertigation versus wide drop. You have both options. What do you choose?
We do. So we have pivots and we have drip. The drip is about twice as expensive as a pivot. So you can put a pivot in for much less and it's a lot more trouble-free. But the drip really gets your motor running because, man, the yields are really, really efficient. But we have stopped using fertigation through the pivots, and we do 100% wide drop. So all of our seed acres, all of our commercial corn that's under pivots is wide drop because it's so much more efficient, and we can control it. And so everything's wide drop.
Anything else? Burning questions? No, I think we'll let everybody stand up at least. They restock the desserts.
After you use wide drop, if you're going in at V8, V10, do you recommend a irrigation pass shortly after that to speed things along?
Well, you sure could. I mean, the reality is at V10, V12, you're probably going to be putting some water on anyway. Now, you're always looking ahead at the weather forecast. And so I have no problem with 8 days of dryness. That wouldn't worry me at all in V10 corn. And so if you say, you know, I've just put on 100 units of nitrogen with Y-Drop, and I got the ability to take my iPhone and start the system and put on 4/10, do it. You know, you're not going to hurt that corn any by doing a little watering, because we're watering pretty steady anyway. When it got, ours pivots didn't shut off through that dry stretch here. We got, you know, our soil temperatures were 110 on the surface. And corn was rolling bad, and our seed fields and our commercial corn, we're running water. We're hitting it. We're not going to let it back up if we can possibly help it. So.
Good questions through the texting. We won't get to them all, but I know you're staying here for a long time yet to answer questions. We're all staying here to help answer any questions. But food's restocked. Take those cushions home with you. Take 2 if you like. And I really appreciate you coming. Greg, you want to finish up?
Yeah. So, thank you from the bottom of my heart. What I want you to do is go home, find you somebody that knows how to be magic on a spreadsheet, and put all of your inputs in great detail for corn and soybeans and for GMO and every expense from every combine service to the tractor. Take a look at it, analyze it, and get ready for a really good 2018. And I thank you for coming. Wish you the best, and you have a safe trip home. Thank you.